Hello, everybody. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jelani, and welcome back to the 46th episode of the DeSci Rising series put on by DeSci World, where our goal here is always to provide an opportunity for many of the wonderful projects on our growing DeSci World dashboard to just formally introduce themselves, update their progress, highlight their achievements, and just generally engage with both the DeSci World and the wider DeSci community. Now, the idea behind all this is that at DeSci World, we very much believe that more than the tech, more than the funding, it is the community using these tools that will usher in many of the changes that we're all looking for DeSci to bring to the various legacy STEM industries. Now, as I mentioned previously, no more so than before do I think that this is a perfect opportunity to discuss this human component of DeSci. I have the pleasure today of speaking with Swift Evo and Nishan Basker, who are the co-founders of DeSci Asia, as well as a few other platforms which essentially is a community that aims to connect, educate, and support local DeSci community development in the Asia APAC region. And so without further ado, welcome Swift, welcome Nishant, and thank you both for taking the time today, and I'm sure it's late where you are, to help us learn more about yourselves as well as the community work that you are both doing through DeSci Asia.
Right. Thank you. I'm Swish Info, which is behind the Twitter account of DeSci Asia, and happy to join DeSci Rising episodes that are invited by the DeSci World. It is amazing that we are part of the DeSci World right now. And first off, that we are quite new. We set up on August this year, so just 3 months. 3 months ago, and from few members and become right now the over hundreds members from different kinds of Asian cities, from 10 different more than or maybe more than 10 different places. For example, the India, Thailand, Vietnam, China, Hong Kong, Indonesia, and Japan, etc., etc. And really luckily that we can participate to GeekCon grants round right now. We are in GG19, and we got one Telegram groups to connecting everybody, and we have one Twitter account, and then we aims to connect each other and know more each members or different kinds of project which is growing in Asia, and help to find the opportunity to grow or support the local DeSci community development in Asia. Yeah, he's what is DeSci in Asia. Brief introduction. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I definitely want to go into deeper about what are some of the initiatives and what are some of the aspects. And I love the concept of, having representation from so many different regions. Oftentimes we see localized DeSci communities, so things like DeSci Berlin or DeSci Chicago, DeSci Boston, all these kind of things, DeSci Montreal, for example, and those are very much smaller scale. But DeSci Asia is a huge initiative, right? Because it's a huge region. Man, I'd love to kind of delve deeper into that. But Nishant, I'd love to kind of hear your intro of what if you want to say a few words to just introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, DeSci World and Jelani for having us today here. So my interest in DeSci is more as a tool maker, because my company Lomads is making tools for coordination, tools for citizen participation in science, so on and so forth. So it's very important for me to stay closer to the community, to support them, and to learn from them, so that we can make the tools which support the initiatives. So I'm currently based in Mumbai, and in India, of course, just as you said, like there is DeSci Berlin and DeSci, Boston. So, all these communities. So in India also, there are a few small pockets, but DeSci is still not very prominent. It's more about blockchain and Web3. And I think what I need to do is, at least in India market, is harmonize the existing communities and enable, sharing of information. And as Swift said, that we are just started 3 months ago, so it's very new. So like science and technology wise, India has very good universities, and there's research right from agriculture to space. But DeSci has not percolated as much. And like if you compare with Europe and US. I mean, like there are several smaller Asian countries, and they have different languages and they have very different regulations. And I think one of the things which DeSci Asia can do is harmonize things, and enable knowledge sharing, and make it more participative. So we're going to dive deep into it, the purpose, but like this is something very exciting, and especially thanks to even you guys that you are organizing DeSci Bengaluru, which will also stoke so much interest in the space and bring more people here as well.
I mean, that's exactly it, right? I think to your point, DeSci, despite its tenets of being a global movement, is somewhat centered in specific regions around the world. I think the APAC region, with the exception of certain communities like DeSci Tokyo, DeSci Japan, there isn't as much representation of actual projects burgeoning from that. So a good example of one project though is LabFront, which is not quite a Web3 platform, but still caters towards opening up scientific access more from the scientific perspective. And the whole goal of us launching the World of DeSci Bangalore conference series is to help promote innovation from the DeSci perspective coming out of there. So we want to see more tools, more teams, more aspects, more community development coming from all the regions. Likewise, we have the last son of Krypton here, who is the head of DeSci Africa. And so these larger regional groups, the goal is to really start to promote and see examples of these projects that are probably existing but haven't plugged into the more conventional, I guess, quote unquote, mainstream DeSci communities yet. And so bringing those on board. Now, Phantom, I'm going to bring you up. I'm not sure if you're part of either of these groups, but we'll go with there. But before we kick off about looking into DeSci Asia itself, I kind of love to hear your guys' backstory. So Nishant, you talked to you about yourself being a builder, a founder of Lomads, and we're going to have you up for your own dedicated episode, absolutely. But I'd love to kind of hear from both you and Swift in terms of how did you get to being a part or wanting to foster DeSci as a whole, but also DeSci Asia? What is your origin stories? Swift, maybe we can start with you.
Right. Actually, like the design, quite new for Web3. Actually, I'm working in the pharmaceutical industry for around 10 years, and I jumped into Web3 around 1 year, and know about design about maybe rough less than 1 year, and understand that which is from beta round of Geek conference, because I saw there is a lots of project which focusing on scientific, and I feel very interesting about the concept of these decentralized science. And then I like many of us, maybe some of us then know about the molecule at the first one, and then find the connection in there and understand wider out and connect with different kinds of friends which like DeSci in Asia. And that's why we find out that it seems there is no place for DeSci Asia looking for the resources or looking for the project. So that's why we co-found and build DeSci Asia this Twitter or this community to connect each other.
Fantastic. And it's a very vibrant community. I've spent time in a few others, and there's a lot of activity, and there's a lot of people joining the DeSci community. So that speaks to definitely an interest in the region, in the local region or the general region for that space. Nishan, I'd love to kind of hear your perspective of where you maybe what your classical or more traditional jobscape was, and how you found yourself in terms of a creator of or a co-founder of DeSci Asia.
Yeah. So before starting my entrepreneurial journey, I was in consulting and also in big corporations in innovation and new venture development roles. So basically always identifying market gaps and developing new products. And so this is what I was doing. And so naturally, here also I was making tool, and one thing about me is that when I see a problem, I really want to do something about it. And when I would watch documentaries such as, ocean conspiracy. I don't know, like, like how our reefs are being destroyed, and other things which are happening. I would always think that how can I really support to this? So should I go and become part of this, or should I be more an enabler, which gives people the tools to do, the things that matter to them? And I chose the later one because I was good at creating tools and conceptualizing them. And that's what I was doing. The other thing about DeSci Asia, why I'm interested, is because I feel a lot of scientific methods, they draw from, I would say, Judeo-Christian thinking, or like have roots in Western cultural tradition and epistemology. Okay. And both China and India, and even, have go back, so far back, and they have their own, ways of thinking and reasoning and perspectives. And I believe that, it's time that we started to harmonize these, and, and draw from these traditions, and enrich the scientific, practice. So it's not just about, like, I mean, like, I would say scientific methods are optimized for physics, and they are applied to biology and chemistry, and, and their scope reduces as we move towards psychology and philosophy. Okay. So I think there is even a case for enriching the scientific practice. And I'm really, very fascinated as, I started reading more and more about, our cultures. For example, believe that the Vedas in India are the first wikis. You know, sorry, my, son is crying, so I just mute, and I'll come back later on this interesting
It's okay. It's
topic.
all good. It's perfect. I think that you brought up a really good point of the kind of psychosocial aspect of science, and something that is not often talked about, and how that kind of permeates and percolates through the scientific culture to bias or weigh science in one particular paradigm over another. And I think we've been not pigeonholed, but at least we've been held within a particular paradigm, which is predominantly Judeo-Christian. And it's interesting to me. One of the most exciting things with DeSci is the perspective of exploring other avenues and what that may yield. Before I get into that, though, Phantom Observer, you're up. I'd love to kind of hear what you have to say.
Hey, DeSci World, Nishant and DeSci Asia. This is Phantom Observer from D Space Community. And we are trying to bring space science in a decentralized manner. And we are trying to just make space more accessible, right? I think part of what you guys spoke is also the, I would say, geopolitical narrative that has funded and kind of created these knowledge pockets across the world. And one of the biggest barriers in space science and technology transfer is something known as ITAR, which is International Trafficking of Arms and Regulations, which has restricted advanced aerospace technology from being shared between US and the rest of the world. And that's something that I've seen as a barrier in India. But even after I came to Europe for doing my research, I found that the barrier doesn't go away, and it's still something that needs a lot of decentralization. And slowly, I think maybe US is trying to coordinate with ISRO, so maybe there is agency level access to some of these things. But yeah, I definitely think that the decentralized way of kind of tracking and having provenance and a lot more can help science just grow and enable people to kind of validate some of their systems and kind of help us with emerging knowledge, which I think Nishant pointed to. And yeah, I'm also from India. I'm from Bengaluru. So might see you guys at DeSci Bengaluru. But the idea was just that how do we kind of bridge people into science? And I'm trying to look at this from even citizen science, like how can you like contribute to science even after you probably are doing some other job and you still have maybe a passion for science and space. can we activate people around that? So yeah, just excited to get into the DeSci community. I think Rod introduced me just a week ago, but Manuel had kind of oriented me a little bit on DeSci maybe over a month ago. So I've kind of been seeing this as a new field or something like that. So happy to kind of get to know all of you as well.
I'm super glad that you've decided to join and come up to speak. And I just kind of throw it out to everybody. This is a pluralistic, open conversation. So if anybody else wants to come in and join the conversation, I'd love to have you up. To your perspective of D space, I think there's so much overlap that exists between or across DeSci, as well as so many other niches, whether it be refi, D space, DPIN, so decentralized physical infrastructure. I think as we move on, as time moves on, these different disciplines mature or these industries mature, there's going to be a blurring of the lines. And so I'm glad to kind of foster these kind of conversations early on. And to your point of DeSci Bangalore, the event itself is to showcase all aspects of science, the application of Web3 and other toolings to help promote open, democratic, accessible science in all disciplines. So you're more than welcome to be a part of DeSci Bangalore. We want to bring in as many people as possible, both local and international, just to kind of showcase a lot of the great things that are happening in this space. And so to that point, all three of you kind of touched upon the slight differences that exist between potential pain points in science across the world. As we've mentioned before, I think DeSci is very heavily weighted in the Western Europe, North America spaces, and there needs to be a better representation of this across the world. What are some of the specific pain points? And you brought up ITAR as one, but what are some of the other specific pain points, even down to the level of citizen scientists, that exist, you feel, in the APAC region that is a little bit different from what is other places of the world? Anybody can take that.
Right. Let me echo, Brendan, what you said before. Actually, in what I made a DeSci is from the GitCon beta run, and then there will be the report which is arranged by DeSci Landscape Analysis Project, which is hosted by DeSci World and Talent Doubt. According to the report of GitCon beta runs, that most of resources or funding, which is heavily focused in the effort on the North America and then Europe. So in the survey of that, all the projects which get the feedback from the computer round, and less than 10% which is focusing on Asian. So this is the first of things that we don't have the much focusing or resources on DeSci in Asia Pac, and that's the first one. And the second one is that the education or the awareness of a DeSci, which is not as high as high or as important in US or Europe. So most of us do not have the well-development places or resources or article or education knowing about what is DeSci. And actually we don't have some local language talking about DeSci. So that's why we make us to see there's not much mature community, then we can work together, or we can have some big event happening in Asian Pac. That's what I saw at this moment.
Interesting. Nishant or Phantom, you guys want to weigh in on this? I know, there's a lot of regions in Asia. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I can take this for now. And yeah, I think language does come and localization does come as a barrier. And there is kind of, even India, like a whole of Asia is just a whole lot of pocket of communities that are quite different. There are dialectic differences, there are cultural differences. And so I definitely think that at least in India, a lot of the youth is oriented towards tech and science. So I do think that there is like a very easy onboarding thing. The barrier that I see to true science is like people actually figuring out applied sciences and pure sciences, and actually seeing more research opportunities and like their way of participation. I still think that like right now a lot of this just gets separated into like industrial research and academic research, and it just gets there, right? So citizen research has largely not largely been there. It's small communities that kind of foster a scientific approach, like I know astronomical societies, that have been in India, in Bangalore and stuff. So I do think that they kind of bring around scientific thinking and kind of understanding of the world. But yeah, I think as Nishant was pointing out, there is a lot of probably the physical world when the physics comes into mind, but we also kind of start seeing more complexities when it comes to biology, and that's something I'm still seeing. And technological approach to biology, the biotech evolution is happening right now. I think as our processes get optimized by AI, we are kind of changing the way we think. Our attention patterns are being changed by different algorithms and things like that. So I think DeSci will be much more of helping people even understand and navigate these technological integrations of their own lives.
That's a really
It's a
good point.
great point. Yeah, I can add two more points to that. So the first is the huge population of India, 1.4 billion, and the number of universities, good universities is just a handful, I mean, and it's super difficult to get into those universities, and they are great pockets for scientific research. But then there are talented people out there, distributed all over the country, who don't have the resources, who don't have the means, And I think one of the things that DeSci will do is allow them to participate, because one disruption was the MOOCs, the online courses. And, you would see if you go to Coursera or any other online courses, always there will be Indian students, from all kinds of courses, because there's so much young talent hungry for, going to the next level, learning. And so while MOOCs taught, like gave them the knowledge, the DeSci will, enable them to do things, and contribute and become part of the global, workforce. So, it's just a progression to that. And I see that, it's a natural progression which will really help. And if you think about other countries as well, like Indonesia, Vietnam, they're all very densely populated country, with so much of young talent. And and this will open up value creation for different disciplines. So that's my first point, that it's a natural next step to MOOCs. While MOOCs democratize the knowledge, then this is gonna democratize the participation, giving the value back to different disciplines. The second point is really about citizen science, participating, having a say in let's say, local issues, whether it's related to biodiversity or some sort of seasonal, diseases, or, or it just could be anything, like, or scarcity of resources. And, like people are enterprising. And so we have seen the brilliance of individual. What blockchain enables is scalability, and that's when we are able to tackle so much more complex problems. And I think, and that's really, makes me enthusiastic that, when people start collaborating at scale, when knowledge becomes more accessible, the things it can unlock is really great.
I think those are great points. Phantom, go ahead, please.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that I think part of this evolution is blockchain adoption at large. I still feel that there are kind of a lot of cybersecurity understandings and changes in the infrastructure that people slowly have to understand and even leverage. and there will be layers to this kind of DeSci from the everyday person, because one thing I did think of was engineering projects in colleges in India. Not all of them get well funded, and finding funding sometimes and sponsorship can be difficult. So yeah, I think helping them with the planning and kind of figuring out some of these understandings can help them structure their projects better and learn in a more scientific manner. Because one thing I'll say is, like, in India, we have this word called jugaad, which is like MacGyvering almost. Like you just kind of make it work, right? Like you just fix a few things. And so in the West, I think the system engineering and a little bit of the structured approach is definitely kind of necessary. And I still think it's not as well understood in India. So there's definitely kind of that benefit that we can give students, but also, yeah, citizen scientists is a great thing I wanted to add, because I wanted to talk about the GLOBE program by NASA. And I found that they have an app called the Observer app that kind of helps you do some level of satellite mapping and matching for I forgot which satellite data, but basically they ask for citizen scientists to come and observe, and basically they are trying to create a global learning environment. So that's something I wanted to throw out there. But yeah, again, a little bit of centralization through NASA, right? So I definitely see similar programs through DeSci being viable.
Yeah, so I actually want to touch on that very last comment that you made. I think oftentimes we have this conversation comes up in the Web3 space, and DeSci, for those who are listening in, is not a solely Web3 integrated framework. It is an extension of open science that leverages Web3 aspects and Web3 tooling where appropriate to help push open science. Really, it is an extension of that. But to your point, oftentimes I would say people get confused with the aspect of, well, this tool is not an open source tool, or this platform is not an open source platform. But it itself helps promote or push the open source access to information, then that doesn't really matter. And I think the devil is in the details, and it doesn't matter to me if the tooling is developed by one person or one group of individuals and it's proprietary to a certain extent, as long as itself helps push forward the prospect of opening up access and reducing barriers to science, I'm okay with that. So that's just one thing. So NASA's Globe platform, fantastic. If it's being able to do that and help individuals, whether citizen scientists just deepen their curiosities and help push that forward, or people who are particularly interested in developing a career in that space, just kind of getting their feet wet in terms of understanding what it actually means to be that. So that's fantastic. And I think a lot of the things that we've spoken about really right now are, again, the kind of socio-cultural aspect of DeSci. These tools open up the opportunities for people to get mentorship. I think for me, the biggest value proposition of DAOs, even the bio-funding DAOs in their current state, is the opportunity to get access to a mentor network and indiscriminately. To have these conversations with peers who can actually help further your skill sets, where you can apply your skill sets. As long as you have an internet connection, you can be a part of science. And that as the education framework of the world starts to shift away from traditional enclosed siloed universities to more a pluralistic dynamic conversation like what we see on Twitter, I think that becomes more and more important, because now you're no longer geolocked. You can speak to the top executive of a longevity researcher who's housed, based somewhere else in Berlin. And you can speak to them no matter where you are in the world and get that kind of fostering, and that's fantastic. Phantom, go ahead.
Yeah, Jelani, I think, right? Truly, like, I was not referring to the fact that NASA has closed off access, but it's not available across the globe. It is restricted to some countries right now. I don't know why. Maybe they don't have the data, or but what I meant was such an initiative to have citizen science of observations on an app is what, like, DeSci can actually do. Like scientific Instagram. That's kind of what I see, an evolution where people are not just taking photos because they're taking photos. They're actually surveying nature as it changes, as it, it's a documentation, it's an observation. So that's my vision, but probably that's kind of why I kind of talk about the observer family and initiatives like this. But ultimately, the goal is to just make science accessible and make our understanding just more refined using critical and scientific thinking.
I mean, I love that. So yeah, absolutely. And I think the concept of, geolocking access to infrastructure is insane in the globalized world. And I agree with you, DeSci as a framework, hopefully will not fall pigeonholed to those kind of things. I think a lot of the frameworks that exist currently, whether it be DeSci nodes, LabDAO's Plex platform, the different the different molecule BioXYZ communities, what we're doing with DeSci World, all of these are openly accessible to all. And I think we're forming a strong enough community unit around them, such as to push them forward and really make them available to as many people as possible. And hopefully we continue down that trend, and it's not, we don't fall into those kind of issues. So yeah, for sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, totally. And again, now I'm kind of bringing a little bit more of the D-space side of things. So I wanted to say that one of the things we have to understand and try to get over time is also communication networks in much more decentralized ways. And there are, I think, open data networks for science already, but definitely we can have much more better distribution through these kind of Web3 chains.
Absolutely. And so I think, one of the things that we kind of talked about is how do we get this attention? How do we create these initiatives? And so to that point, what are some of the things that DeSci Asia as a community is looking to do? What are some of the actual steps that you guys are all doing in your various regions to help promote the awareness of DeSci? Because I know that's a tough thing. As somebody who's working in, DeSci world, going from the social aspect and talking to universities and trying to get students in, there's a lot of resistance, there's a lot of reticence. Scientists by nature are skeptical, and that's great for science, but sometimes it also prohibits innovation. So what has your guys' experience been like, and what are some of the initiatives that you're looking to push forward?
Right, yeah. Actually, would I like to echo that Asian is very diversified and different language insight and different culture and background. So it's hard to use just one language like Europe or US to distribute all the different information in Asian. So for example, in DeSci Japan, they more communicate in Japanese, and in other, for example, in Chinese community, then maybe we are more likely to use Cantonese or Mandarin. So for example, we may plan to have to. That's why we aim to have to support the local development for the local community for the DeSci in Asian, in Asia, for example, DeSci in India, and we hopes to, for example, we held in real world DeSci meeting in Chiang Mai, which is making a background or get well prepared for the long-term development if there is one DeSci Thailand in the future. Just get well prepared for that. And then on the other hand, we hope to do some much basically educational things. For example, translating the English articles into different kinds of language in Asian, which is doing the education and increase the awareness of DeSci in Asian community. And there's the second part, and the first part is through the regular meetup, through the virtual meeting, for example, the Twitter Space or the Google Meet, and it helps to arrange or gather the friends, which is from different cities, but within the same country or same location. Then they may have some synergy or similar topic, which is looking for DeSci. As you may know, there are different people from different kinds of area or cities, but not very much. For example, not less than 10 from every places. So that's why we are tries to connect each other from different kinds of city at the first one, and then build up some virtual meeting at the, and then when they have the gathering and more membership, more and more members join in, and we can have more formal scientific presentation or conference in the future.
That's great. I think that's really the only way to go, to be honest. When it comes to bootstrapping a community, that's very difficult, let alone in a new niche. And to your point, there are like maybe 10, 20, 30. I'll give a perfect example. I'm the co-founder of Web3 Montreal, of DeSci Montreal, I'm sorry. And our normal meetups are about 30 people. There's a very vibrant scientific community in the region where I am. But even that turnout is not very hard. And so I think that taking the approach of creating a tiered community. So you have DeSci Asia, which can plug into DeSci Calcutta, DeSci Bangalore, DeSci Taiwan, Japan, Korea. I think having these tiered systems, but that can all kind of funnel up into a cohesive tribe is a fantastic way of doing it, because now you start to pool your resources, you start to pool the hive mind, you start to pool your interest rates, your interests, and that helps bootstrap the ecosystem fire. It makes it also look bigger than it actually is, which is also great for optics. So I think that's fantastic. And there's always support from our end, and any way that we can help with that, whether it be connecting with other people, helping promote, we're always down for that, obviously. But yeah, Nishan, I'd love to kind of hear your perspective as well.
No, I think that's great point. And, Swift has been, very active, in trying to coordinate, all the different, communities and you guys, even you guys, right? So I think what we are all trying to do is, make a village out of this big global network, so we have all these nodes like you, Swift, me, and other people, each leading each of the pockets. And, and if we are coordinating and sharing information, we can go back and dissipate it in our networks, and also vice versa, that in our local networks, if somebody needs some help, some expertise, that who should I connect with and where should I look for, then it's very easy for these nodal individuals, who are all connected, to dissipate that information, So the whole goal is that, you make it seem like a village because we are just connected. The other thing is, so the conferences are a great way for Web3 in general, and also for DeSci folks to come together, right? And by setting up entities like DeSci Asia or local communities, what we are trying to do is just keep that rhythm of meeting and sharing more frequent, and so we can all go for hybrid models as well, which could be very interesting. That of course the local IRL meetups help to make the communities more cohesive and builds higher trust. But the virtual one can, really also bring people who are not exactly located in the main cities, or even enable cross-city, cross-regional, sharing of, information. And for example, the Bankless DeSci virtual unconference could be great. And I think that we would soon be having something like that for DeSci Asia as well.
That would be amazing. And big shout out to Elijah and the rest of the DeSci, the Bankless DeSci folks. That unconference idea has taken the space by storm, and I think it's fantastic. And it's such a simple thing. The ability to just have this communal, collective discussion around specific topics, and the nice thing is that it's not DeSci focused, but it talks about aspects that can be applied to DeSci, or how DeSci can be applied to certain contexts. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and I'm looking forward to see more of those happening throughout the space. Phantom, go ahead.
Yeah, and another thing that I was definitely thinking of was localization of data centers, layer of separations for processing, and there is still a lot of centralization in the tech world. So a lot of this, even what I see, is kind of like, at least in terms of AI, there's not a lot of training data in some of the regional languages of India, and there definitely needs to be some of this work done in terms of, yeah, I think the government will step in, but at the end of the day, it's up to the people to kind of get their heritage into a lot of this kind of technological ways. So there is kind of a lot of discussions of how culture can be kind of integrated with science, and I'm seeing some of these models known as team. So I wanted to ask, how is DeSci about these kind of bringing culture and science in?
I think it depends who you ask. Um, my experience in this space is that if there's fragmentation is not the right word, but there are concentrations of efforts that focus a lot on the tech and the tooling, and that is a product of the fact that the space in and of itself is very, very early. And the only way for us to really affect change is to have the toolings in place for people to leverage. So a lot of focus is on that. But then you have initiatives like ourselves and DeSci Asia and all the other more community folks that are looking to bring in that kind of social layer that exists so as to harmonize the technology with the social cultural aspect. So, Phantom, I don't know if you were here at the beginning, but the normal intro that we give to DeSci Rising is the fact that it's beyond the tech, beyond the funding. It is for the people to leverage these tools. And that's really the crux of it. None of this doesn't mean anything. None of this means anything if nobody is here to use it. And nobody is going to use it if they don't feel a value coming from that. And I think to your point, the cultural aspect of the world, the cultural aspect of humanity has been abstracted away or has been removed away from science. Science is very, for lack of a better word, drab and gray, or it can be. I think the advent of AI to a certain extent has started to bring in the notion of, well, we can have context dependent science, we can have semantic ready analyses of our data, and how important that is and the richness that that brings. I also think that traditional infrastructure like IP and other frameworks were not able to capture the assets that are culturally derived and bring that in coordination with the data. But now we have those tools. So to cut a long story short, I think it's very, very important. And I see ourselves, and you see it here. Our conversations are about, well, what are the different regional specific needs? Similar way for like funding. Funding is concentrated in the north, in the global northwest. And so the global northwest science is what's predominant in the world, but there are other sciences, whether it be cultural relevant sciences, um, things that have been eradicated in the global north, but are still prevalent in other areas that are not being funded. There is a need for these kind of things, for this kind of trickle effect or this broadening effect of that stems from cultural difference, geographical differences. And I think so that's the crux of DeSci. You would not have DeSci. DeSci will never work, will never be effective if it doesn't take into account these cultural, sociological, economical, and regional differences.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I think Phantom raised a really important point about the local side of things. Like we have so many different languages in India, and I think it's more than 26 the number of languages that are spoken in India. So I would just like to share something. Like I was searching on the internet about decentralization, and I was surprised to find a search result which was to a link to a particular school syllabus that teaches about decentralization. So this part, when I was going through that content, I found that there were some few chapters about what is decentralization and what essentially it means, and how the decentralization of authority can help in local societies. So I think that's a very important aspect to consider. Like like in India we call it Vikendrit Vigyan. Like if you call it in translate it to into Hindi, we call it Vikendrit Vigyan. Vikendrit meaning decentralized, and science meaning Vigyan. So we have so many different languages. So if we are able to tap into this particular aspect, like letting people know about what is the how science was essentially decentralized like centuries ago, like how science used to be practiced in not only in India but in different parts of the globe. Like there was peer-to-peer exchange of ideas. So that's a really good point that Phantom raised. Yeah, thanks, Phantom. Yeah.
I think we're coming back to the source of science, and that's part of the narrative here. Is how do we bring it back to what it once was that help us get to the innovational space that we are now. Nishant, go ahead.
Yeah, I was speaking about India and China and how their histories go back far, far back, And when we read about science, modern science, the references always go back to medieval Europe, Renaissance, and always it's about the scientist. And whenever something, from the old, like far back, it's always like in China, printing was discovered, or in India, zero was discovered. That nuance is not there because, the science was, the books were written in Western Europe. And that's why, and these cultures, it's all known. If you go back, there are details of how perfumes science was there, and then, even the practice of medicine, both in India and China. And a lot of discoveries were made, we have references to all the plants which are now being patented in often Western medicine. So and I think AI will also help with all the language translations. And about decentralization, the point that I was making is Hinduism has survived for 5,000 or even more years because it's a decentralized religion. There is no one godhead. There is like people go crazy when they start to look at a polytheistic religion with so many different streams of thinking, monotheistic, dualistic, and so on and so forth. So it's crazy. And it was all known that to live in a decentralized setup, you have to agree to disagree. You have to acknowledge that our knowledge is limited about any context, and that's why you will have different models, different systems, and which will fit the context. Okay, so these things were known. And it is just, and that's why it has been resilient. Like India has been invaded again and again by Mughals and British and so on and so forth. But and other migrations have happened, but there was always reconciliation. That's what I was saying. And that's why it's one example of how decentralized systems can be resilient. So, I mean, this is something just I wanted to point out, that there is low resolution understanding of what happened in these cultures and the nuances, which is kind of lost because the science books, modern science books as we understand today, were written in Western Europe and a lot of history as well. So, now as these countries are really coming up, and people are getting educated, and they also come back and, look at their own cultures to, discover and find a place of pride, then, and it's always not about thinking that, oh, you are secondary, because, yeah, I mean, like they all have histories and, kind of you find your roots and you do this. So I think there are a lot we can learn and bring, forward. And this is where, it's for the different pockets in Asia to collaborate, and go beyond their language barriers, and what's happening in, let's say, China, and the best practices to be brought in India, and so in Japan, and in Korea. And I think that's, as Ivo pointed out, is one of the roles of DeSci Asia could be to really, be that interface, and whether through newsletters, whether through member database where people can see each other, collaborate, and most importantly, sharing the best practices, and and also encouraging people to look back into what was there and bring to the fore, and kind of reconcile with modern science, reconcile or even enrich. Why just always reconcile? I think it's time that we question, because what like we are not in a very good place. Like there is both good and bad in the world today, right? There's like all the systems are, our natural systems are under stress, and there is also wealth disparities and stuff. So there has been problems, and of course there are also so many good things. And I think from here to the next, I think we need a much more holistic, a richer, more nuanced aspect, and I think DeSci in general has the potential to enable that.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And I think to many of your points, this is where the technology kind of comes into place, where we can have unbiased writers of history. Moving forward, the application of blockchain will show who exactly has contributed to what, when this has happened, when this was timestamped. And so it's no longer the victors or the loudest who get to determine and define what is science and what is not science. It is the actual fact. The facts can speak for itself, and that's partially where the AIs come into play. AIs can argue and distill out information in a somewhat unbiased way. And I think that's a beautiful point when we're talking about science into the future. Phantom, I see your hand up, but I know Evo had his hand up previously. Would you like to jump in here?
Yeah, just a quick sum of that. DeSci Asia is not want to dominate the space, talking about decentralized science and represents different kinds of local region of Asia. But on the other hand, that we hopes to pull all the friends interested in design together and build up the connection first, and then support uh, local friends in design to develop their local community. As echo with Nishan says that there are different kinds of language and different kinds of culture and historical reasons behind. So they can proactively to develop their own decentralized community by themselves. So DeSci Asia would like to play the roles to set the ground first, and then help to support the local society or the local community to develop by themselves and set their own target or strategy and what they want to do. Yeah.
I would like to echo, double click, reassess that same statement. What I'm hoping to see in the future is you have these very personable, localized versions of DeSci that is related to the individual issues that exist or the individual cultures that exist in a particular region. And I think the emblem of DeSci Asia is a fantastic representation of what we're hoping to see, what you're hoping to see in amongst Asia, and what we're hoping to see globally, and what we're already seeing globally, right? With DeSci Africa, DeSci Latin, all the other groups. We want to kind of have this culmination of individual groups that are distinct from one another, but have shared mission statement and some commonalities that overlap. I think that's the only way that we can enrich this sociocultural, technological, scientific realm that has been lost in a little bit, the last 150 years or so. But Phantom, go ahead, please.
Yeah, totally. And part of this for me was kind of talking about, having these uh, ways to kind of bring people together to do science, right? I think that's truly what DeSci, like I see as, is like, oh, you want to do science, but you don't know where to go. Like, here's a meetup, like, and there's just a bunch of scientists who do their maybe everyday job, and then they're just like, hey, why not you join us for a tour where we teach you botany, or we teach you how we take care of these kind of things, or so I definitely think there's a lot of trust that science has had with the COVID thing, and I definitely feel like there is a big reason to have a lot of different uh, checkpoints and validations with a lot of science and even information networks, because I feel like having a single source of truth can have sometimes consequences where the distribution and verification can take time. But if you have these kind of local ways to kind of activate around it, there are definitely ways to check for some of these sources and definitely help that scientific way of kind of containing information. So I definitely think this is something for DeSci to be the like for the frontier thing, right? Like, we are managing science and we are having a conversation about science, and we are trying to enable science through this infrastructure, if I understand.
Absolutely right. Absolutely correct. Um, I really have nothing else to add about that. I love the concept of, if you have science, if you want to do science, if you have a question, there's a community here that's open to accept you, help teach you, help grow you, who you yourself can help grow. There's a bi-directional value exchange that exists that doesn't exist currently in the realm of science. And I'm glad that we're kind of bringing that up. Okay. To your point, And as we wrap up the space a little bit, and I know we can have these conversations for hours, and I actually want to have these conversations more regularly. I'd love to have just a sit down with the different regional groups, and let's just talk about science. Let's talk about DeSci. Let's talk about what are some of the nuances, specific nuanced problems that exist in one region that maybe another region can help on. So to the groups that I see here, Daniel with DeSci Africa and a few of the others, I'm hoping that we can actually get this done. This was attempted a while ago, but now I think we have enough people to really hit this, maybe not at full scale, but really with a good effort. But one of my last questions that I want to bring to the space are, we're talking about DeSci Asia, we're talking about the community that exists there. What are some of the projects that we are not aware of or that we know less of that are coming out of DeSci Asia as a whole? I know Nishan with Lomads, and Avi, I think you're behind DeSci India. I could be wrong, but if you are, then we have
It's
right.
me.
So
Yeah.
fantastic. So we have Gizmo, two projects that are fantastic. What are some of the others that people should be aware of coming out of Asia?
I think Climacteric is also participating in World of DeSci. I noticed the Twitter page, so I think they are also part of DeSci initiatives. Yeah.
Anybody else? Ivo, do you know any other?
I think
Nishan?
DeSci is pretty new here, actually, you know, and
Yeah, in
especially
India
in
it's
India,
very
you know,
new.
and
Yeah.
as you know, Swift said, it's just 3 months, you know, but refi has been around for some time, and we have proponents here. So you know, like some of the DeSci projects which could be you know, labeled as DeSci are also, you know, under the umbrella of sort of refi, you know, around climate you know, initiatives out there. I mean, I have a friend here in Mumbai who's part of it. But I think you know, as we are kind of you know, activating the group, you know, and reaching out to universities, we would have you know, more and more DeSci project. But DeSci is very new. You know, when I was talking to Avimanyu to see that, you know, as like, you know, Avi, that, you know, are there other groups? We thought that, you know, for India it's better to have like a bigger umbrella of blockchain club, and under which you know, the DeSci can be there. Yeah, but I think DeSci is pretty new here.
I love that point of the refi, and this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where there's a lot of merging and overlap of events. People who are implementing, you know, regenerative finance to help push data acquisition, help support local data instrumentation, I think is an extension, or at least an aspect of DeSci, or that DeSci can plug into, from data sources and remuneration, and how do you incentivize participation in the scientific realm. So, by the way, all of those participants more than welcome to come to DeSci Bangalore as well. We want a vast amount of representation. Phantom, go ahead.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that we want to also bring like space science. So we have a couple of initiatives. One is like a metaverse to do ConOps and missions on the moon, which is Lumco. And we have Copernic Space, which is kind of creating a marketplace for some of these space data sets, as well as kind of art curating stuff. So they're sending a payload to the moon. And so there are quite a bit of space initiatives that I think are great ways to bring people into the scientific realm and have that kind of synergy between, you know, DSpace and DeSci, and basically bring people into the realm of science. And then we can kind of have them questioning the world, you know, the universe.
That's amazing. That's how I define science, truly. Science is the process of questioning what are some of the laws of the universe and then taking the steps to try to figure them out. That's the greatest like icebreaker opener that I come to, that I use when I define what kind of scientist I am. Go ahead, Ivo.
Yep. I just left the two Twitter accounts, which is belongs to DeSci Japan and DeSci Tokyo, and there is quite mature community development in Japan right now. So you may see quite different kinds of event or symposium, which is hosted by DeSci Japan or DeSci Tokyo right now, by following their Twitter. And on the other hand, that as we all know, that there is no DeSci round in GeekCon 19 at this moment, but I'm pretty sure that DeSci round may become in the first quarter or maybe the next year, 2024, and then we will see more and more design project which is grow up or get a sustainable development by the Deacon grant funding and appear. So then we may collaborate and co-promote each other. So you can see the updates or news from DeSci Asia Twitter. Yeah.
Oh, so there is no doubt that in the coming, I want to say year to be conservative, but in times hopefully less than that, there's going to be more opportunities for DeSci to become more forefront in things like the Gitcoin round. There are a lot of very pioneering individuals and very industrious individuals that are looking to make that a staple. I think the impact-based application of Web3 technology is very appealing, even to those who are not in DeSci. People want to allow transactions, for example, in DeFi, but for a cause. Now, I think if we create that landscape, that flourishing ecosystem, people will come because it provides validity for what they're doing. It provides validity for all of the things that they're building. So I have very little doubt, and I've had enough conversations with individuals to know that that is definitely around the area. Thank you for shouting out DeSci Tokyo and DeSci Japan. There's a lot of great things. I know on our end, we're interested in having along similar to what we're doing in Bangalore, a DeSci Southeast Asia conference, one that brings together a lot of the regional communities, and that can include the Indian communities as well and all the other ones across the world. But we just need to have, the opportunity to team up with persons like yourselves and kind of get that ball rolling. So Phantom, I know you have a comment. Just let me get in one other question before we wrap up this space. And I think the culmination of it all is what I like to ask most prominently is what do you guys see DeSci Asia as in its ultimate form? What is the moonshot version of what you guys are creating currently?
What I dream is that under the development of DeSci Asia, there will be different kinds of design community which belongs to that that area. For example, the DeSci Japan, for example, DeSci Taiwan, DeSci Thailand, and we can communicate with each other. And then it may be some days then all of us which will be mature, then we can host, for example, a cross Asian Pac conference, which is we can have different kinds of topic and representative from each city and share their growth and get a synergy. And for example, what you say that the social layers is quite important for better development in Asia Pac. That's what I dream for.
I think that's great. Nishant, Avi, you guys would love to hear your moonshot ideas of this entity.
Yeah,
Actually,
definitely.
Yeah.
So
actually,
go ahead.
Go ahead, Nishan. Go ahead, Nishan.
Okay. So, definitely. So what Swift said, is at the core of it, that, having a common interface for knowledge sharing, and for, member matchmaking. And initially during the conversation, I was saying that, if MOOCs, the massive online courses, they opened up knowledge for everyone, then, DeSci will enable them to really participate, to contribute, and to solve some of the local problems, and as you were talking about, Africa and countries in Latin America, which have their own problems, which are not addressed, so that's, so first is the knowledge sharing interface, which cuts across different languages. And the second one is sort of the enabling platform, which, helps with matchmaking people. And as you also talked about mentorship and resources, which also gives them the resources, the muscle power to do things, not just learn and think, but actually to do things, and I think, that's what we are kind of working towards, whether through meetups and conferences or building tools. But the goal is to, inch closer to that reality.
Fantastic. Avi, go ahead.
Yeah, what I was thinking is like in the next year, early next year, I'm really looking forward to hold a exclusive conference for DeSci in Kolkata, And also been communicating with some DeSci friends that I've known for a few years since the past the COVID era. So I would like to give a shout out to Sarah, Kenneth, and Stanley. So these people have been really encouraging and very supportive about the whole concept of DeSci. So initially, I'm really looking forward to start the conference with an educational setup, and by inviting the people from the traditional scientific arena, because unless we explain to them what is basically decentralization and how this concept actually works, it will be much easier to introduce them to the world of blockchains and crypto. So I would like to go in that direction. Yeah.
No, absolutely a must. Over the last year, I think we've started to see conferences and gatherings shifting away from the, I guess, quote unquote, traditional Web3, DeFi,
Yeah.
crypto
Yes.
space, and more towards the education-backed and traditional
Yeah.
scientists, or tailoring
Yeah.
to traditional frameworks of conferences. And so
Yeah.
that's
That
as
really
a
helps
goal.
in. Yeah. That really
Yeah,
helps in bridging the side of creating a bridge between traditional science and decentralized science. So yeah. Thanks.
absolutely. That's a must. Phantom, go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jelani. And I wanted to tell you guys, the moonshot is real. DSpace has projects that are sending DNA to the moon. So, yes, we can start doing like science in space. I think part of it is just getting the right funding. I think the infrastructure is there. And another thing I wanted to add was that I don't know if you guys want to let me shell, but have you guys applied for Gitcoin? Because the D space is on Gitcoin right now, and we have applied for all the projects. So just wanted to, put that out there. So the link is in my profile for my project, but there are about 14 projects related to space and bringing decentralized access. So yeah, feel free to check them out.
I'm going to double click that. For those of you who are listening now, those who will listen a little bit later, go check out the Gitcoin round. We don't have an official DeSci round, but there are a lot of fantastic projects that bridge the divide of refi, DeSci, DSpace, and so many other aspects that are worth investigating. It doesn't take a lot to move the needle. A dollar donation, a little bit of donation goes a very, very long way with Gitcoin. And so please proactively go and support these projects. We will hopefully get a DeSci dedicated, really powerfully matched round in the near future. And then we'll be able to start lifting off these projects, shifting them from ideas and theories to actual pragmatic tool sets and platforms that people can use to bring back science, or bring science back to the people. And so with that, guys, I think that is all the time that we have. I'd like to thank all three of you for coming in. Phantom, you were a very pleasant surprise jumping up on the stage. I very much appreciate that. I hope that we can keep this conversation rolling off air. Let's see how we can help each other. Again, all of you are more than welcome to participate in the various conferences that we're doing around the world. If you need help with anything at all, let me know. You could either through Twitter or through Telegram or whoever. The whole DeSci World team is really, our whole goal is to help promote the space indiscriminately. And I just, again, thank you all for taking the initiative to put forward and push forward this movement in your local regions. And I look forward to working with you guys into the very, very long future. Any parting remarks you guys want to make before we close off, please? The floor is yours.
Okay, I will jump in and say thank you, Jelani, for giving me this opportunity, because it's been great getting to know so many people. And this initiative seems like a great opportunity to bring science to the masses. So, yeah, I think the next step is just for us to coordinate and just put those efforts. And yeah, I think we will get the needle moving together.
I would just say thanks, Jelani. It was a great conversation. We, really enjoyed it. And yeah, and once again, DeSci Asia is also raising on Gitcoin, and so do support. And thanks again, and have a good rest of the day.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jelani. It was really great listening. Thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks everyone, and thanks DeSci World to invite DeSci Asia to attempt this DeSci Rising episodes, and it's our honor to be part of the DeSci, and would like to contribute all what we want and to help the development of DeSci in Asia and connect to the world.
Well, thank you all again for participating. Nishant, we're going to have you back up for Lomad. So if you haven't listed, list. Avi, I want to get you up for Gizmo. Phantom, I'd actually also like to get you up for one of an episode on your project. I think DSpace is close enough to DeSci to be warranted. So list your project on our dashboard. Everybody else who's listening, go follow, go engage, go talk, have the discussion with them. And with that, thank you all for attending DeSci Rising episode 46. The time has flown. I wish you all a fantastic weekend, and I will see you next week for our next episode. Have a good one, guys. Take it easy.